In this lesson, we're going to discuss transforming objects. If you'd like to follow along, go to File, Open, and in the Working Files folder, go into chapter number 4 and select Transformation Tools and just click Open. Like most of the tools in Indesign, related tools work exactly the same way. So if you know one of the transformation tools, you know them all. Why don't we start with the easiest way to use the transformation tools? You'll remember from a previous lesson, the reference point, which allows you to pick the origin of a transformation. So if I were to select an object with my selection tool and click on the lower right reference point, any transformation that I make will happen from that point. So if I wanted to scale this red square, all I would have to do is hit my S key to get to the scale tool, and then double click on that highlighted scale tool. And you can see that there are crosshairs in the lower right-hand corner. And whatever number you type into the scale field is the amount that it's going to scale. This is picking up my scale percentage from the last time I used the tool. After I have my percentage in there, I could hit OK to apply that transformation, cancel to get out of the dialog box, or copy to make a duplicate of the original object at 90%. I'm going to hit copy. And you can see now there are two squares, one of which is much smaller. I'm going to go to my selection tool and just hit delete to get rid of that selected square. Now I'm going to select the original square again, and this time I want to rotate. But maybe I want to rotate around the lower left-hand corner. So if I click on the lower left reference point and then go to the rotate tool, which is hidden under the scale tool that we just used. So if you click and hold, you can select the rotate tool. Now to use the rotate tool, all you have to do is double click on it. And you can see the crosshairs are in that lower left-hand corner. And with the angle selected, I can hit my up arrow on my keyboard to change the angle at 1 degree at a time. Or I could just type a number in here, like how about 45? And to make a preview, I need to uncheck preview and recheck it. And you can see that it has rotated around that lower left-hand corner 45 degrees. As a matter of fact, the reference point has also rotated. So it's easy to tell that this lower point in the reference point represents this lower point in my bounding box of the selected object. And once again, I have a choice of OK, cancel, and copy. I'm going to hit copy to make a duplicate, go back to my selection tool, and just delete the duplicated square. Let me reselect that square in the upper left-hand corner of my grid. And this time, I'm going to go to the shear tool. You could hit your O key to get there very quickly, or you could have just clicked down on whatever tool was on top of the group of transformation tools and found the shear tool to select it. The shear tool works exactly the same way as the two other transformation tools that we talked about. I can select a reference point. How about the center reference point this time? And you can see there are crosshairs right in the center of the object. And if I double click on the shear tool, there's two parts of the shear tool dialog box. The first is the shear angle. If I make this angle 45 degrees and hit preview, watch what happens. From the center of the object, the top of the object and the bottom of the object have moved 45 degrees. This angle is 45 degrees. And it's doing it horizontally because by default, the horizontal axis is selected. Watch what happens if I click vertical. It's doing it the opposite direction. The axis is now vertical. And once again, I have a choice of OK, cancel, and copy. I'm going to make a copy and then just go to my selection tool and delete the copy. There are also lots of ways to transform objects in the control panel. Sometimes you don't even need to use the tools. If I select the square in the upper left-hand corner of my grid again, you can see that I can rotate right here. So all I have to do is, once again, select a reference point and then click my up arrow or just type something into the field. I'm going to go back to 0. I can also shear an object from here, but I can only do it with a horizontal axis. And you can see that is getting sheared from the center. I'm going to go back to 0. Some other kinds of transformations that you can do in the control panel. Why don't I select my slice of watermelon and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. And you can see that it did it around the center because the center reference point is selected. Let me choose rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise to get it back to where it started. Another option is flip horizontal or flip vertical, and they do exactly that. If I click on flip horizontal, it's going to flip the image around horizontally. Let me undo that by hitting Command Z or Control Z on a PC. I can do the same thing vertically. And now it's been flipped upside down. Let me undo that by hitting Command Z or Control Z on a PC. One other thing I wanted to point out is this P. A lot of people think that's a button and nothing happens when they click on it. But if I hover above it, it says not flipped. But also this P, this capital P, will change depending on how an object is transformed. Watch what happens if I start rotating this selected image. The P is also rotating. If I now flip the object, watch what happens. The P will not only be rotated, it is also backwards. So it's easy to keep track of how an object has been transformed. Now, another thing I can do is I can undo everything very easily. And the way I can do that is go under the Options menu to the far right side of the control panel and go to Clear Transformations. And it's going to go right back to where it started. If you've been wondering how to scale images, what you do is go over the top of the image and click on the content grabber. Now the image itself has been selected. To make it bigger, all I have to do is click the up arrow, and you can see it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Or I could just type a number in here. How about 15%? This must be a really large image. And by default, the X field and the Y field are actually linked together. So if I make this one 15 and I hit enter or return, it's going to make them both 15%. It keeps them in proportion. So that's really kind of nice. In the next lesson, we're going to continue discussing objects.